Portugal, a small country perched on the far western edge of Europe, has always been defined by its relationship with the sea. With its rugged coastline battered by Atlantic waves, Portugal seemed to gaze outwards, its people drawn to the endless blue horizon. For centuries, the ocean was both a barrier and a promise, a vast unknown that sparked curiosity, hope, and ambition in the hearts of the Portuguese. Back in the 1400s, this small nation began to dream bigger than ever before. The bustling ports of Lisbon and Porto were alive with the sounds of shipbuilders, merchants, and sailors, all preparing for journeys that would push the boundaries of the known world. The air was thick with excitement and uncertainty, as Portugal set its sights on lands far beyond the familiar shores of Europe. The Portuguese wanted to explore the unknown, to venture into uncharted waters where no European had sailed before. The idea of setting out into the vast, mysterious ocean was both thrilling and terrifying. But for these daring sailors, the lure of discovery was irresistible. They imagined distant lands, strange peoples, and wonders beyond their wildest dreams. Of course, their dreams were not just about adventure, they were also about wealth. Stories of gold, spices, and precious goods from the East filled the imaginations of Portuguese merchants and nobles. The markets of Europe were hungry for exotic products, pepper, cinnamon, silk, and jewels, that could fetch fortunes for those bold enough to bring them back. Trading with the East, a land everyone said was overflowing with riches, seemed like the ultimate opportunity. Maps of the world were still incomplete, filled with blank spaces and wild guesses. But one thing was certain: whoever could find a direct route to Asia would become fabulously wealthy and powerful. But the usual ways to get there overland were fraught with danger and expense. Caravans had to cross vast deserts, treacherous mountains, and territories controlled by rival empires. Bandits, harsh climates, and political obstacles made the journey slow, risky, and costly. Only a few goods made it through, and by the time they reached Europe, their prices were sky-high. The Portuguese, however, were skilled sailors and shipbuilders. They had a long tradition of fishing and navigating the tricky Atlantic waters. This gave them a unique advantage. They could imagine a different way to reach the riches of the East, one that would bypass the dangerous land routes altogether. They dreamed of going by sea, of finding a maritime path that would connect Portugal directly to the treasures of Asia. If they could succeed, they would not only grow rich, but also change the course of history. The idea was bold, risky, and unprecedented, but it was exactly the kind of challenge that inspired the Portuguese spirit. This big dream, fueled by a love of adventure and the promise of fortune, set in motion a new era. It was the beginning of the age of exploration, a time when brave men set sail into the unknown, guided by the stars, the winds, and their unshakable determination. Navigators kept careful logbooks, inventors improved navigational tools, and explorers mapped new coastlines, forever expanding the world's horizons. Portugal, with its small but sturdy ships and its people's boundless curiosity, was ready to lead the way. Against all odds, this little nation would become a giant on the world stage, opening new routes, forging new connections, and inspiring generations to come. The age of exploration had begun, and Portugal was at its heart. For centuries, the East was a place of wonder and fascination for Europeans. It was a land shrouded in mystery, filled with stories of unimaginable wealth, strange customs, and exotic wonders. To the people of medieval Europe, the East seemed almost like a dream, a distant world where fortunes could be made and legends could come to life. The very idea of the East sparked the imagination of kings, merchants, and adventurers alike, drawing them with the promise of treasures and experiences beyond anything they had ever known. The markets of the East were overflowing with goods that dazzled the senses. Spices like pepper, cloves, and cinnamon filled the air with their rich aromas, while silks shimmered in the sunlight and jewels sparkled with every movement. These were not just luxuries for the wealthy. Everyone from kings to commoners longed for a taste of these exotic treasures. The allure of these goods was so powerful that it changed the way people lived, dressed, and even ate. Pepper, cloves, and cinnamon weren't just spices. They were the very essence of the East, bringing new flavors and excitement to the tables of Europe. In a time when most food was bland and simple, These spices transformed ordinary meals into extraordinary experiences. They were so valuable that they were sometimes used as currency, and owning them was a sign of status and sophistication. The taste of the East was a taste of adventure, and it was something everyone wanted to experience. For the Portuguese, the East represented more than just exotic goods. It was a gateway to power and prosperity. The wealth that flowed from the spice trade was immense, and whoever controlled it could become incredibly rich and influential. The Portuguese saw an opportunity to change their fortunes forever, to rise above their rivals and become leaders on the world stage. The dream of reaching the East and controlling its treasures became a driving force for an entire nation. The competition for these treasures was fierce. Merchants and traders haggled over prices, navigated dangerous routes, and risked everything for a chance at the riches of the East. The Portuguese were determined to find a way to bypass the middlemen and take control of the trade themselves. This ambition fueled their desire to explore, to innovate, and to take risks that others might have avoided. The stakes were high, but so were the potential rewards. Driven by dreams of wealth and glory, Portuguese navigators began to search for a new way to reach the East, a sea route that would allow them to trade directly for the spices, silks, and jewels they so desperately wanted. This quest required courage, skill, and a willingness to venture into the unknown. Navigators studied maps, built new kinds of ships, and set out on voyages that would change the course of history. The search for a sea route to the East became a national obsession, inspiring generations of explorers. The journey was filled with danger, stormy seas, uncharted waters, and the constant threat of failure. But for the Portuguese, the promise of unimaginable wealth and the chance to unlock the secrets of the East made every risk worthwhile. Their determination and daring would soon lead them to discoveries that would reshape the world, all because they could not resist the powerful lure of the East. The leader of Portugal's sea dreams was Prince Henry the Navigator. He didn't go on the long trips himself, but he was super important. From his place in Sagres, Prince Henry made a center for learning about the sea. He brought in map makers, astronomers, and shipbuilders. He always encouraged exploration, paying for trips down the coast of Africa. Prince Henry believed they could sail around Africa to get to the East, to India and beyond. His strong belief and support helped Portugal's sailors. He taught them to love discovery and learning, not just getting rich. In the 15th century, the world's oceans were vast, mysterious, and full of peril. For the Portuguese, who dreamed of reaching distant lands and discovering new trade routes, the Atlantic Ocean was both a challenge and an opportunity. To conquer these unknown waters, they needed a ship that could do what no other could. Enter the caravel, a revolutionary vessel that would change the course of history. Unlike the bulky ships of the past, the caravel was light, agile, and fast. Its most important feature was its special sails, called lateen sails, which were triangular and could catch the wind from almost any direction. This meant that, for the first time, sailors could travel against the wind, a crucial advantage when navigating the unpredictable currents and gusts along the African coast. The caravel was not just fast, it was also strong and reliable. Its sturdy wooden hull could withstand long journeys across rough seas, and its spacious decks allowed it to carry plenty of cargo. This made it perfect for the long voyages that would take Portuguese explorers far from home, loaded with goods to trade and supplies to survive the journey. But a great ship was only part of the equation. The Portuguese also equipped their caravels with the latest navigation tools of the age. These instruments allowed sailors to plot their course with greater accuracy than ever before, reducing the risks of getting lost in the endless blue. One of the most important of these tools was the astrolabe. By measuring the position of the stars, sailors could determine their latitude, helping them figure out exactly where they were on the vast ocean. This was a huge leap forward in navigation, making it possible to venture farther from familiar shores with confidence. The magnetic compass, which had already been in use for some time, became even more essential on these journeys. With the compass, sailors could keep their bearings even when the sky was overcast or the coastline was out of sight. It was their constant guide, pointing the way through uncharted waters and helping them stay on course as they explored new worlds. With these new ships and tools, And above all, the courage and determination of the Portuguese sailors. The impossible became possible. They faced storms, unknown dangers, and the vast emptiness of the ocean, but their spirit of adventure and their trust in innovation carried them forward. The caravel, the compass, and the astrolabe were more than just tools. They were the keys that unlocked the world beyond the horizon. The Portuguese trips down Africa were slow and steady, taking years of careful planning and patience. Each trip went a little further south, exploring new areas and mapping unknown coastlines. They traded with people in Africa for gold, ivory, and pepper. These trips were hard and risky. The sailors faced dangerous currents, scorching hot weather, and big storms at sea. But they kept going because they wanted to get rich, find adventure, and see new places. Each successful trip made the dream of reaching the East by sea feel closer, encouraging more trips and making Portugal's sea empire bigger and stronger. As the Portuguese went further south in Africa, they met many different cultures and kingdoms. Some, like the Mali Empire, were big and powerful, controlling trade across the Sahara Desert. Others were smaller groups on the coast who fished and traded. The Portuguese traded with these kingdoms, giving things like cloth, metal tools, and guns for gold, ivory, spices, and sadly, later, slaves. These trades weren't always fair. The Portuguese changed the places they visited. Trade brought new things and some wealth, but it also caused fighting and the terrible start of the slave trade. In 1488, Bartolomeu Dias did something amazing. He sailed around the bottom of Africa, showing that a sea route to the east was real. This opened the door to trade with India. 10 years later, Vasco da Gama sailed to Calicut, India, in 1498. This started a new time in world trade, connecting Europe directly to the riches of the East. Da Gama's trip was hard, but it started a time when Portugal controlled the Indian Ocean, creating a huge trading empire from Africa to Asia.